Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Russell here, and if you've been watching the news or even reading any articles, it's likely you've seen headlines that look a little bit like this, saying, Canada's big banks are seeing their profits soar, here's how they're making their money, or even ones like this saying, oh, a money grab as big banks raise fees. So banks are seeing record profits, and at the very same time they're raising fees for the Canadians who are using their services. Now, obviously this is pretty controversial, with the narrative of the greedy banker sort of doing anything they possibly can to increase profits while politicians largely let that happen. And while that story might be accurate, it's the reality of the world that we live in. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how you can sort of turn the tables and you can take advantage of the banks instead of the other way around, how you can take your money back, earn back the fees that you've already paid, and make a little bit of profit in the meantime. But before we do, click the link in the description where you can get 40% off the Canada Money Mastery program with coupon code GROW, where we go into way more depth about how you can build your wealth right here in Canada. Back in March of 2020, absolutely nobody knew what was going on. It was a crazy time in life, and it was a crazy time in the markets. Take a look at this huge crash that we saw right as news of the pandemic was breaking. In response to this craziness, the banks had to follow some new rules, and this was put into place by OSFI, or the Office for the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, essentially the people who govern the big banks. They said that they had to follow very specific rules to make sure that things didn't get even worse. This included rules about how these companies, the big banks, could reward the people who had bought stock in their company, the investors in their company, through things like dividend payouts and stock buybacks, but we'll get more into that in a second. But now it's expected that these rules are going to be lifted in the next 6 months, and this could mean huge gains for investors at the very same time that many Canadians are paying more than they ever have in banking fees. Now, some more left-leaning politicians want to stop this from happening, but in my opinion, I don't think it's too likely to happen because of the huge lobbying power that these banks have over the government, sort of shaping which policy gets focused on and which ones sort of fall by the wayside. So living in the current system we do, we might as well learn how we can take advantage of these realities to make our own lives better instead of just being frustrated that the system is the way it is. So that's what we're going to do today. According to this article, in 2015, the average Canadian paid $216 in banking service fees per year. Now, obviously, because this is 2015, it's likely raised quite a bit. So for our purposes here, we're going to assume that the average Canadian in 2021 is paying around $300 in banking fees every single year. I want to show you how you can get those fees back from the bank, but first we need to understand one of the ways that banks reward their investors, and it's called dividend payouts. It's obvious that big banks make an absolute boatload of money, but did you know that all of those profits don't just go to the CEOs? They actually send out some of that money to the investors who have bought stocks in their company. Now, usually, historically, that's ranged from anywhere to from 40 to 60% of the profits each year going out to these investors. This payout is called a dividend. And remember, much of that dividend, the profit that goes into it, well, it came from the average Canadian, you and me, using our accounts and paying fees. Let's take some of those fees back. Let me show you this. This is the stock chart for Bank of Montreal, or BMO, one of the big six banks here in Canada. Now, you don't need to know what every single information detail here is, but what we're going to look at today is this number right here, and it's listed under dividend yield. This tells the investor how much dividend payout they're going to get for every $100 that they put in. So for the instance here, if you were to invest $100 in Bank of Montreal stock, you would essentially get paid over the course of the year $3.35. And that amount, or dividend yield, can actually be different from bank to bank. Let's take a look here at Scotiabank's stock chart. You can see it has a rather high dividend yield right here of 4.52%, or they'll pay you $4.50 for every $100 you invest over the course of a year. So obviously this interest rate of around 4.5% is a lot better than what they're giving you in your savings account. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Now, if we take, for example, a 4% interest rate, that's what we're going to use for this example, we can actually find out how much we'd have to invest in order to get that average $300 we pay in fees per year back from the banks that we use. So if we do the math and we want to earn back that $300 per year that the average Canadian spends on banking fees, well, then we'd have to invest $7,500 to get that $300 back each year at a 4% dividend yield. If we invested that $7,500 today and we were getting that 4% dividend yield, or $300 per year in dividend payouts, and we took those $300 per year in dividend payouts, and instead of paying them to the bank in fees, we put them back into reinvesting it after 20 years, well then that initial $7,500 invested plus the dividend payouts reinvested would bring us to $16,669.37. And there are actually other stocks that pay higher dividend yields as well, even up to 7%, and that would give you $30,000 at the end of that 20 years, but we can get more into that sort of strategy later. You can probably start to see just how powerful this dividend payout tool is in order to help us get our money back from the banks, the money that was taken from us in fees. But do you remember those rules I mentioned at the beginning, the ones that the big banks had to follow? Well, one of those rules was actually pertaining to how much they could raise the amount that they pay out on their dividend yield. Now, once these restrictions are lifted, which many people think will happen in the next 6 months, well, we could see the dividend yields of each of these different banks and each of their stocks shoot up dramatically. And there's actually another rule that's set to be lifted that could help investors even more, and it's called a stock buyback. Now, sometimes when companies are doing really well and they have tons of cash, much like the big banks are right here in Canada, they'll buy back a ton of their own stock, take it off of the market, and hold it themselves. This is good for anyone who's invested in these stocks for two main reasons. The first one is supply and demand. When these companies buy back these stocks, they're essentially adding to the demand and reducing the supply. Now, the stock market is largely dictated by supply and demand. When there's not enough supply to meet the demand, well, prices will typically go up, and of course, that's good for anyone who's currently holding a stock. And second, when a company buys a stock, it essentially eliminates those stocks from the market, meaning that anyone who's holding a share, well, they actually own a little bit of a larger piece of that company or larger piece of the pie than they did before, because those previous shares that were in there sort of diluting that pie, well, they've been removed, and now everyone who has it, well, they get a little bit more. Both of these together usually work to push up the value of a stock when there's a stock buyback. So not only could you be making money from the dividend payouts, you could also see the value of the underlying stock that's paying you dividends go up in value, and as a result, we sort of have this rolling effect where the dividend itself will actually go up because of the value of the stock going up. All of this is essentially to say that instead of holding your money in a bank savings account where your money is only earning like less than 1% and you're likely paying more than that in fees, you could instead open up a TFSA investment account with a platform like Wealthsimple and invest in these bank stocks and actually get paid a higher interest rate on your money. Now, if you haven't already set up an account before, there's a link in the description where you can check out Wealthsimple. They do zero commission, zero fee trades for Canadian stocks. It's one that I personally use for Canadian stocks and ETFs. So check out that link in the description. And I believe they have a promotion going on right now where if you sign up, you can actually get a free stock. So check that out and let me know how it goes. No matter what your political stance is on these big banks or even capitalism in general, I think it's pretty important to learn to play the game by the rules of the system that currently exists. So I hope this video has at least got you started to think about how investing could actually help you in the long run if you haven't already thought about that already. No matter what your opinion is, I want to hear from you down in the comments. Let me know what you think. And if you do use that Wealthsimple account, let me know if you do get the free stock or if you just get a cash bonus. And while you're down there, click on the link to check out the Canada Money Mastery Program, 40% off with coupon code GROW, where we cover this among many other topics that are important for any Canadian who wants to build their wealth. So check it out, see if it's a good fit for you. This is the cheapest the program will ever be going forward into the future, so I'd love to see you in there. But with all of that said, thanks so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.